Let's dig into the world of color. There are two primary color spaces, RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue, that is the primary color space of your monitor or projectors or televisions. CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is the primary color space for all output devices. Your inkjet printers, your color laser printers, printing presses. In fact, with the new dark user interface built into Photoshop, it can be difficult to see the black against the black. So here's a little trick. Right-click, or if you're on a Mac touchpad and you don't have a right mouse button, hold down your Control key and click. Not Command, but Control. And I can choose light gray, or ideal for the print world is medium gray, a neutral gray to look at your images. Now, even though this image was made up of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, by plugging in 100% black, 100% yellow with no black for each one and filling them in Photoshop, it's still displaying it technically in RGB color space because I'm looking at it on my monitor. So, to make this truly a CMYK image, I have to take a look at channels and see where, firstly, the red information lies. There's a little red here in cyan, some in magenta, and some even in the black when it gets converted. Blacks aren't necessarily 100% black ink. They have undercolors, colors like magenta and yellow and cyan that make them richer. In the green, these will be converted. So your cyan, magenta again, and your black again. And finally, in the blue, these will be converted. So if I go to Image, Mode, CMYK Color, it's telling me that I have US Web Coded, which is the out-of-the-box factory settings for RGB to CMYK conversions. They're just warning you this may not be your intent. It would be nice if they said, call your print shop to find out what you should be using. I'm simply going to click OK because that's what most users do. They just click OK. And now I've committed to my cyan plate, my magenta plate, my yellow plate, and my black plate. And if I save and close this file, I get a conversion that I cannot get back. I lose some tones. Even though you go from 3 colors up to 4, you would think you get the ability to reproduce more. But RGB is shooting light at your eye. You can make 16 million colors with RGB. Depending on your printing press and your printing conditions, or the stock of paper that you're using on your inkjet, or the inks that you're buying, you might get far fewer colors printing in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, because you're committing to that black portion, and light's actually reflecting off the paper to your eyes. It's not being projected directly at you. If I undo this, you'll notice the file size in RGB was 900K. If I redo that, it's grown to 1.7 megabytes. That's because every color channel adds to the file size. I'll undo for now, and here's the most radical difference in going from RGB to CMYK. If I just undo and redo, these colors don't move a lot. You might see no shift. On my screen, I see a subtle move in the magenta, but nothing radical. However, if I click on the RGB and I go to Image, Mode, CMYK Color, I get the same warning, which says this is ideal for a web press with coated glossy stock of paper. I'll click OK, and there is a radical move. If I undo and redo, your blues get muddy. You really can't produce that rich Windows title bar blue in the CMYK world. Mixing cyan and magenta doesn't make that Windows blue. You actually have to purchase a branded color like a Pantone color to get that vibrant shade. It just doesn't exist. The greens get dull, and your reds might shift towards orange or pink. So if I undo or redo, Control Z or Command Z, you could see a before and after. Red's not so bad. Green and blue are very disappointing. So today, I work wholly in an RGB workflow. My inkjets and color lasers do a beautiful RGB to CMYK conversion to print well on those devices. If I go to a printing press, I check with my print shop and see what color settings they would like in Photoshop. And actually, I convert to CMYK when I PDF. That way my files are smaller and they work for web, print, mobile, and tablet publishing. And I check my colors. Even though I work in RGB all the time, if I'm working on a job that goes to a printing press, I check my colors by going to View and Proof Colors. Proof Colors shows me what it will be when the PDF converts it to CMYK or when I go to Photoshop and go to Image Mode CMYK. This way I can correct knowing where I'm going. Now the last little demonstration I want to give you is why the color settings matter so much on an image. This is an RGB image, and I could see my red, green, and blue plates. But I'm going to convert it twice using 2 different color profiles for printing presses. You can try this test on your own, but you may need to pause and rewind and practice through it a couple times until it makes sense. Firstly, I'll use the factory defaults. Image, Mode, CMYK color. And I'll click OK. I can click Don't Show Again if I don't want to see that every time. And I'll use History to make a new document out of this so I can compare it to a different group of settings. So here's my first new document called CMYK color. I'll hit Command 0 or Control 0 to fit in window. And I'll close my RGB and CMYK examples so I can tell what's going on. Now I'm going to undo the conversion to CMYK color and change my color settings. Edit, Color Settings. And I'll use a different profile. I'll use one that will show a bit more of a radical change. I'm going to go to Newsprint Stock. Newsprint can't carry as much ink as sheet-fed and web presses that are designed for higher quality. So if I click OK on this, and you wouldn't want to leave that setting, but this is for illustration, and then I go to Image Mode CMYK Color, I'll click OK again, and it tells me this time I'm on Newsprint, and here's where you'll see a noticeable difference. Window, Arrange, 2 up, vertical to see them side by side. Initially, I noticed this image looks a bit richer, especially in the auburn of my hair, and the pinks just look more true. But if I click on this image and choose my black plate, and click on the one I used newsprint for, and click my black plate, the black is far lighter. Newsprint can't hold as much ink, meaning my contrast isn't as good. Then I'll check out the other colors. I'll click on the newsprint version in yellow and the US Web Coded in yellow. And again, a radical difference in the detail and tone and amount of color that's carried through to the image. I'll go back to CMYK on both, and this is just a brief introduction to the differences between RGB and CMYK. It's important to know, always check with your print shop, see if they have color settings they recommend for their specific presses and the paper you're printing on.